Hey everyone, today we're diving into something that literally every single one of us does, but honestly, a whole lot of us really struggle with. We tend to think of sleep as just closing our eyes, right? Like pulling a plug and powering down. But the reality? Sleep is this incredibly complex, super active biological process. And when it breaks down, it takes a massive toll on the body. Actually, roughly 6 to 10% of adults deal with chronic insomnia. So today, we're going to reconstruct the architecture of rest. We'll use some fascinating research to show you exactly how your body sleeps, why it sometimes just completely refuses to, and most importantly, how to fix it.
But first, let me ask you this. Have you ever woken up at 3 a.m., stared at the ceiling, and just could not get back to sleep? It is incredibly frustrating, isn't it? Your mind just starts racing, you check the clock, and suddenly you're wide awake. Well, if you've been there, I really want to validate that struggle. It's not just in your head. There is a profound biological reason this is happening to you. So we're going to break down the exact science of why this 3 a.m. wake-up call happens and how to stop it for good.
All right, let's look at our roadmap. We'll start with the science of sleep and insomnia, then decode that 3 a.m. wake-up call. We'll jump into diet and light signals, talk about dealing with shift work, look at medications, both the benefits and the harms, and finish up with a practical, healthy sleep plan.
Okay, Section 1, the science of sleep and insomnia, building the foundation.
You know, it's really interesting how we actually define insomnia. It isn't just about lying awake for hours in the dark. It's difficulty initiating, maintaining, or just getting quality, restorative sleep. And it's officially considered chronic if it happens 3 or more times a week for over 3 months. But here is the crucial piece of the puzzle. Insomnia is so often maintained by a vicious anxiety loop. You tell yourself, if I don't sleep 8 hours, I'm going to crash completely tomorrow. And that very thought raises your arousal levels, spikes your stress hormones, and physically pushes sleep even further away. Basically, your brain starts associating your bed with a failed attempt at sleeping rather than actual rest.
So how is sleep actually supposed to work? Well, the architecture of rest isn't just one long solid block. It's a series of 90 to 110-minute cycles. You start in N1, which is light sleep. Then you move into N2, where your body temperature drops and your memories actually start to stabilize. Then you hit N3. This is the deep, slow-wave sleep, where your body repairs tissue and builds up your immunity. And finally, you enter REM sleep, where your brain becomes highly active, processing emotions and dreaming. The big takeaway here is that the first half of your night is heavily focused on physical repair during N3, while the second half is dominated by REM for emotional processing.
Which brings us to the magic numbers, 7 to 9. The general consensus across medical guidelines is that healthy adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. But I really want to highlight something absolutely critical from the research. Quality equals quantity. 6 hours of continuous, deep sleep, where you're navigating through those cycles seamlessly, is vastly superior to 9 hours of fragmented light sleep, where you're constantly getting pulled out of your deep repair stages.
Moving on to Section 2, the 3 a.m. wake-up call, and why returning to sleep is hard. So, there are exact biological roadblocks standing between you and returning to sleep. First, when you wake up suddenly, your body releases a spike of cortisol, which is a wakefulness hormone. Second, your brain's default mode network fires up. That's the part of your brain that replays the day or worries about tomorrow, basically turning on a massive anxiety loop. Third, if you grab your phone to check the time, that light exposure instantly halts your melatonin production. And finally, remember those 90-minute cycles? Well, if you wake up right in the middle of one, your brain is highly active, making it physically impossible to just drop straight back into deep sleep.
All right, Section 3, diet and light signals. How your environment affects your sleep.
Let's do a direct comparison of some of these signals. On the sleep blocker side, we've got high sugar, which causes fluctuations that'll just wake you right up. Then caffeine, which literally blocks adenosine, your natural sleepiness chemical. And let's myth-bust alcohol right now. Yes, a drink might knock you out initially, but it severely disrupts the second half of your night, totally destroys your REM sleep, and pretty much guarantees you wake up. Now, on the sleep promoter's side, kiwi is packed with natural serotonin. Almonds give you muscle-relaxing magnesium. Tart cherry juice is incredibly high in natural melatonin. And chamomile contains a calming compound called apigenin. These aren't just snacks, they're biochemical signals telling your brain to power down.
And speaking of signals, pay close attention to this number, 6. That is the minimum half-life in hours of caffeine in your body. Let's put that into perspective. If you have a coffee at 6 p.m., half of that caffeine is still actively blocking sleep receptors in your brain at midnight. Even an afternoon coffee acts as a direct biological signal telling your brain to stay vigilant and awake.
But out of all the signals, light is the ultimate timekeeper for our circadian rhythm.
Getting bright sun in your eyes within the first hour of waking up is exactly what sets your biological clock to start winding down 14 hours later. On the flip side, staring at the blue light of a phone at 2 a.m. completely halts your melatonin and resets your clock right back to morning mode. Interestingly enough, studies show that red light can maintain alertness safely at night without suppressing melatonin. So that's a fantastic hack if you just need to get up to use the restroom.
Section 4. Dealing with shift work and tricking the biological clock.
The data shows that up to 44% of night shift nurses suffer from shift work sleep disorder. This completely breaks the circadian rhythm and leads to deep, chronic exhaustion. But here's the crucial point. Your body doesn't inherently hate night shifts. It hates unpredictable biological signals. So here are some survival tactics. When you leave a night shift, put on dark sunglasses immediately. Even if it's dawn, you absolutely must block that morning sun from resetting your clock. Try to keep your night shifts to a maximum of 5 in a row. Take a highly strategic 20 to 30-minute nap right before your shift, and use bright light therapy at the very start of your shift to trigger alertness. It's all about tricking your biological clock with intentional light management.
Section 5. Medications. We're looking at the benefits, the harms, and some alternatives.
Before we even think about looking at pills, check out this quote. CBT-I, or cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, is the absolute gold standard. Research shows it consistently beats medication in long-term effectiveness. Why? Well, because pills just mask the symptom, while CBT-I actively retrains your brain to associate the bed with sleep again. It tackles the actual root cause, the anxiety, and those broken routines.
But, when medications are necessary under a doctor's care, you really need to know the landscape. First up, benzodiazepines. These have a high dependency risk and are generally not recommended for long-term use. Second, the Z-drugs, like zolpidem. While they're super popular, they carry medium to high risks, including complex sleep behaviors like sleepwalking or even sleep driving, which has literally led to thousands of ER visits. But look at that bottom row, DORAs, or dual orexin receptor antagonists. This is a newer class of drugs. Instead of sedating your entire brain, they specifically block orexin, which is the brain's wakefulness chemical. They carry a very low risk of dependency and are considered much safer for longer-term use.
Now, what about over-the-counter supplements like melatonin? I mean, surely they're completely harmless, right? Well, actually, a massive 2025 study of over 130,000 people revealed a truly shocking statistic: 90%. Taking melatonin for over a year is linked to a 90% increased risk of heart failure and double the risk of mortality from any cause. Look, melatonin is fantastic for short-term use, like beating jet lag or getting through a brief shift work transition, but it is a hormone, not a harmless daily gummy vitamin.
Finally, Section 6, a practical plan for healthy sleep, reconstructing your routine. So this is the 45-minute wind-down timeline. Think of this as sending a cascade of biological signals straight to your brain. At 45 minutes out, dim all the lights and drink some chamomile tea. You are actively lowering your cortisol. At 30 minutes, have half a banana and 5 almonds. This gives you tryptophan and magnesium without spiking your blood sugar. At 15 minutes out, use the 4-7-8 breathing technique. You inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Pair this with a lavender scent. You're literally forcing your nervous system to shift gears. And at 0 minutes, you enter a cool, dark room with absolutely 0 screens. You are now perfectly primed for that N1 stage of sleep. But what happens if you do all of this and you still wake up at 3 a.m.? You use the golden rule of CBT-I, the 15-minute rule. If you can't sleep after 15 to 20 minutes, get out of bed. Seriously, go to another room, sit in dim light, and do something incredibly boring. And whatever you do, do not look at your phone. Only return to bed when your eyelids are heavy. This is called stimulus control. It physically forces your brain to break the association between your bed and the anxiety of tossing and turning. Your bed has to remain a sanctuary strictly for sleep.
Which brings us to our final thought today. Think about this question for a second. Are you trying to sleep, or are you allowing it to happen? You see, the very act of trying activates the stress centers in your brain. Healthy sleep isn't about forced effort at all. It's about setting up the right biological environment, managing your light, timing your foods, avoiding those anxiety loops, and simply stepping out of the way so your body can do what it naturally knows how to do. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, here's to a much better, deeper night's rest.